13. Disarm through strategic weakness and vulnerability. Too much maneuvering on your part may raise suspicion. The best way to cover your tracks is to make the other person feel superior and stronger. If you seem to be weak, vulnerable, enthralled by the other person, and unable to control yourself, you will make your actions look more natural, less calculated. Physical weakness, tears, bashfulness, paleness will help create the effect. To further win trust, exchange honesty for virtue. Establish your sincerity by confessing some sin on your part. It doesn't have to be real. Sincerity is more important than goodness. Play the victim, then transform your target's sympathy into love. We all have weaknesses, vulnerabilities, frailnesses in our mental makeup. Perhaps we are shy or oversensitive or need attention. Whatever the weakness is, it is something we cannot control. We may try to compensate for it or to hide it, but this is often a mistake. People sense something inauthentic or unnatural. Remember, what is natural to your character is inherently seductive. A person's vulnerability, what they seem to be unable to control, is often what is most seductive about them. People who display no weaknesses, on the other hand, often elicit envy, fear, and anger. We want to sabotage them just to bring them down. Don't struggle against your vulnerabilities or try to repress them, but put them into play. Learn to transform them into power. The game is subtle. If you wallow in your weakness, overplay your hand, you will be seen as angling for sympathy or worse, as pathetic. No. What works best is to allow people an occasional glimpse into the soft, frail side of your character, and usually only after they have known you for a while. That glimpse will humanize you, lowering their suspicions and preparing the ground for a deeper attachment. Normally strong and in control, at moments you let go. Give in to your weakness. Let them see it. There are fears and insecurities peculiar to each sex. Your use of strategic weakness must always take these differences into account. A woman, for instance, may be attracted by a man's strength and self-confidence, but too much of it can create fear, seeming unnatural, even ugly. Particularly intimidating is the sense that the man is cold and unfeeling. She may feel insecure that he is only after sex and nothing else. Male seducers long ago learned to become more feminine, to show their emotions and to seem interested in their targets' lives. The medieval troubadours were the first to master this strategy. They wrote poetry in honor of women, emoted endlessly about their feelings, and spent hours in their ladies' boudoirs listening to the women's complaints and soaking up their spirit. In return for their willingness to play weak, the troubadours earned the right to love. Little has changed since then. Some of the greatest seducers in recent history understood the value of acting slavishly to a woman like a troubadour on bended knee. The key is to indulge your softer side while still remaining as masculine as possible. This may include an occasional show of bashfulness, an extremely seductive tactic for a man. It gives the woman a sense of comfort and even of superiority. Remember, though, to keep everything in moderation. A glimpse of shyness is sufficient. Too much of it, and the target will despair, afraid that you will end up having to do all the work. A man's fears and insecurities often concern his sense of masculinity. He usually will feel threatened by a woman who is too overtly manipulative, who is too much in control. The greatest seductresses in history knew how to cover up their manipulations by playing the little girl in need of masculine protection. The women were the ones in control of the dynamic, boosting a man's sense of masculinity in order to ultimately enslave him. To make this most effective, a woman should seem both in need of protection and sexually excitable, giving the man his ultimate fantasy. The Empress Josephine, wife of Napoleon Bonaparte, won dominance over her husband early on through a calculated coquetry. Later on, though, she held on to that power through her constant and not so innocent use of tears. Seeing someone cry usually has an immediate effect on our emotions. We can't remain neutral. We feel sympathy, and most often will do anything to stop the tears, including things that we normally wouldn't do. Weeping is an incredibly potent tactic, but the weeper is not always so innocent. There is usually something real behind the tears, but there may also be an element of acting, of playing for effect, and if the target senses this, the tactic is doomed. Beyond the emotional impact of tears, there is something seductive about sadness. We want to comfort the other person. As Tourvel discovered, that desire quickly turns into love. Affecting sadness, even crying sometimes, has great strategic value, even for a man. It is a skill you can learn. Use tears sparingly and save them for the right moment. Perhaps this might be a time when the target seems suspicious of your motives, or when you are worrying about having no effect on him or her. Tears are a sure barometer of how deeply the other person is falling for you. If they seem annoyed or resist the bait, your case is probably hopeless. In social and political situations, seeming too ambitious or too controlled will make people fear you. It is crucial to show your soft side. The display of a single weakness will hide a multitude of manipulations. Emotion or even tears will work here too. Most seductive of all is playing the victim. For his first speech in Parliament, Benjamin Disraeli prepared an elaborate oration. But when he delivered it, the opposition yelled and laughed so loudly that hardly any of it could be heard. He plowed ahead and gave the whole speech, and by the time he sat down, he felt he had failed miserably. Much to his amazement, his colleagues told him the speech was a marvelous success. It would have been a failure if he had complained or given up. But by going ahead as he did, he positioned himself as the victim of a cruel and unreasonable faction. Almost everyone sympathized with him now, which would serve him well in the future. Attacking your mean-spirited opponents can make you seem ugly as well. Instead, soak up their blows and play the victim. The public will rally to your side in an emotional response that will lay the groundwork for a grand political seduction.